Hello, this is Marianne, and for the next hour I will be reading articles from the April 2026 issue of the Buffalo Latino Village on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. Page 1. Latino parents face new barriers reclaiming children after deportation. A new national report reveals troubling obstacles confronting Latino parents separated from their children through immigration enforcement. Deported parents are facing steep bureaucratic hurdles when trying to reunite with children left behind in the United States foster systems. Many cannot obtain the US-based documents required to prove identity or custody, resulting in months or even years of forced separation. Advocates call this a silent continuation of family separation under another name. For Buffalo's Latino community, the issue feels close to home. Local immigrant rights groups report ongoing calls from parents asking what would happen to their children if they were suddenly detained or deported. Families fear that once a child enters the foster system, navigating courts and agencies from abroad becomes nearly impossible. The report has renewed demands for federal reforms that protect mixed-status households and ensure parents abroad are not erased by bureaucracy. Immigration policy continues to shape the emotional landscape of Latino families in Western New York. Petro-Rubio clash sparks debate over Latino identity. A sharp exchange between Colombian President Gustavo Petro and U.S. Senator Marco Rubio has ignited a broader debate about who gets to define Latino identity in 2026. Petro criticized Rubio's positions, arguing that Latino leadership should not be built on stepping on one another, while Rubio dismissed the remarks as inappropriate foreign interference. The clash spread quickly across Spanish-language media, highlighting how politically diverse the U.S. Latino community truly is. Informing our community. For many viewers, the dispute raised deeper questions. Is Latino identity defined by nationality, language, culture, race, or ideology? Some see Rubio as representing a conservative anti-socialist tradition shaped by exile and Cold War memory. Others view Petro's critique as reflecting newer Latin American movements focused on inequality and sovereignty. In Buffalo and across the diaspora, these tensions surface in homes, churches, and community meetings. The Petro-Rubio clash is less about two men and more about a community still wrestling with who speaks for it. Cuba blocked by Trump. Cuba is facing a deepening energy crisis as U.S. sanctions and global tensions restrict access to fuel, triggering widespread blackouts and disrupting daily life. Despite mounting hardships, Cuban leaders remain defiant, rejecting U.S. pressure for political change. The island now leans heavily on Russian oil shipments, which Washington seeks to block, intensifying shortages that hit key sectors like tourism. Communities endure long hours without electricity, revealing both frustration and resilience. For Cuban Americans and the broader Latino diaspora, the crisis stirs concern, hope, and skepticism as Cuba navigates external pressure and internal challenges. UN warns of ongoing torture in Venezuelan detention centers. A new United Nations report warns that torture and mistreatment persist in several Venezuelan detention centers despite political shifts in the country. Investigators found credible evidence of beatings, electric shocks, sexual violence, and prolonged isolation for Venezuelan families living abroad, including those recently settled in Western New York. The findings reopen painful memories of repression and flight. Local support organizations report heightened anxiety among Venezuelan immigrants, some of whom speak with fear publicly about their experiences. The UN is calling for international monitoring and immediate reforms for Latino readers across the region. This story is a reminder that crises in one nation ripple through the entire diaspora. The Buffalo Latino Village will continue bringing you news from across the Latino world, highlighting how global developments connect directly to our neighborhoods. Next article, we need to keep education on the forefront. Education and Equity, Latino Families and Buffalo Public Schools by Alberto O. Capas. For years, Latino families in Buffalo have struggled to gain meaningful influence within the Buffalo public schools system. Despite the growing number of Latino students, especially in the West District, our community has remained largely absent from the decision-making tables that shape our children's futures. The recent election of Talia Rodriguez to the Buffalo Board of Education finally gives us a voice, but it is only a beginning. One elected representative cannot carry the weight of an entire community that has been historically overlooked, underrepresented, and too often silent. The truth is uncomfortable but necessary. Latino adults and youth are not involved in education advocacy at the level of our children deserve. We have very few community advocates consistently showing up at board meetings, pushing for equitable resources, or demanding accountability. Meanwhile, our students continue to face barriers in language access, cultural understanding, and academic support. To change this, Latino educators and community leaders must take a more aggressive, intentional role in shaping policy and supporting families. We need more Latino administrators, principals, assistant principals, department heads who understand our culture and our language and the lived realities of our neighborhoods. Representation is not symbolic, it directly affects how discipline is handled, how families are communicated with, and how students are supported. The election of Talia Rodriguez gives us a starting point, not a finish line. Her presence on the board should open the door to meaningful discussions, stronger advocacy, and progressive improvements that reflect the needs of Latino students across Buffalo. As the publisher of the Buffalo Latino Village puts it, if we want equity, we must show up for our children. No one will fight for us if we don't fight for ourselves. The path forward requires courage, unity, and a renewed commitment to educational justice. Our kids deserve nothing less. Buffalo's Lower West Side, 2 schools, 1 bilingual legacy. Buffalo's Lower West Side is home to 2 of the city's most important bilingual institutions, Herman Badillo Bilingual Academy, PS 76, and School Number 3, long recognized as cultural anchors for generations of Latino families. Together, they form a corridor of dual language education that reflects the neighborhood's deep Latino and immigrant heritage. Herman Badillo Bilingual School serves students from pre-K through 8th grade with a strong dual language program and a student body that is overwhelmingly Latino. Its small class sizes, community partnerships, and wraparound services make it a hub of academic and cultural support. Just blocks away, School Number 3 continues this bilingual mission with its own PK 8 program, serving a similarly high percentage of Hispanic students. Known for its close ties to families and its commitment to Spanish-English instruction, the school provides a welcoming environment for newcomers and long-time residents alike. Together, these two schools stand as pillars of bilingual education on the West Side, preserving language, strengthening identity, and ensuring that every child has access to a culturally grounded, community-centered education. Next article. When temporary measures become permanent, ICE inside U.S. airports by Eri Alvarado. As a Department of Homeland Security funding standoff drags on, a striking imbalance has emerged inside America's airport system. The nation's aviation security workforce is unpaid and collapsing. At the same time, Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) agents, funded through a separate multi-year appropriation, continue to receive full pay and operational support. Congress allocated approximately $75 billion in long-term funding to ICE through a 2025 spending package, insulating the agency from shutdown impacts. By contrast, TSA depends on annual congressional appropriations, leaving it vulnerable to political gridlock and weaponization of the agency, as we are seeing with the deployment of ICE agents into U.S. airports. More than 50,000 TSA workers have now gone weeks without pay, leading to rising absences, resignations, and visible strain across major airports. Lines strengthened, staffing gaps widened, and the system responsible for screening millions of travelers each day is being held together by workers who are legally required to show up despite not being compensated. Against that backdrop, ICE agents have now been deployed into multiple U.S. airports to assist with identification check. The agencies involved do not perform the same function. TSA officers are trained in aviation security screening, standardized safety protocols, and passenger processing. ICE agents are trained for enforcement operations like detention, arrest, and investigative work. Federal workers' unions have already raised concerns that ICE personnel are not trained for aviation screening roles, warning that the substitution could create safety risks rather than resolve them. For travelers, the shift is not abstract. An agency whose presence in communities has been the subject of ongoing national controversy, including criticism over enforcement tactics, use or force incidents, murdering citizens, and civil rights concerns, is now appearing in one of the most visible civilian environments in the country. While officials describe the deployment as temporary and necessary, given the current staffing crisis, TSA is a perfect example of how temporary necessity becomes a long-term accepted norm. The federal government has secured long-term funding for enforcement operations, approved hundreds of millions of dollars for immigration messaging, and maintaining full operational continuity for ICE, while it has failed to pass funding that would ensure TSA workers are paid. The result is a system in which the agency built for enforcement remains stable and expanding, while the agency responsible for routine civilian safety is left vulnerable to collapse. Whether the situation is the result of political deadlock, policy design, or misaligned priorities, the outcome is visible in real time. Enforcement remains funded and present while public-facing safety functions are strained. That reality is not playing out at the front doors of the country, where the imbalance between enforcement and public safety is no longer rhetorical, but directly experienced by millions of travelers moving through U.S. airports. When we challenge financial allocations into agencies that have a proclivity for violence, we are challenging the premise that violence is needed to enforce our laws. When politicians place more value on economic development and funding these agencies and their ability to violently enforce laws that they do for the safety of their citizens, then we have a much deeper issue to address than ICE being the new agents at US airports. The defunding of TSA was by design in order to force the public to accept ICE agents as the new airport security agency. The terrorism has been taken from the streets of our cities into the entry ports of our country, all with the funding, consent, and encouragement of Democrats and Republicans alike. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo Latino Village on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Page 2. The need for community representation and transparency. This past month, the Hispanic Heritage Council, led by community leader Casimiro Rodriguez, held an event at the Isaías González Soto Library on Porter Avenue and Niagara Street, where they named the auditorium in honor of Dr. Tamara Alsalce, a bilingual educator with a distinguished record of service and leadership in education. This is the same organization that previously named the library after González Soto. It now appears that the HHC has taken it upon itself to decide which Latino names are placed on buildings across the Lower West Side, an area where most Latinos in Buffalo reside. We have a few recommendations. First, the HHC must establish a real process for community input, especially from residents and leaders outside its usual circle. Be transparent about the selection process and the criteria used to make naming decisions. And although HHC may not listen, we urge them to review the accomplishments of other deserving figures, such as Dr. Olga Carman, using fair and consistent standards. For the record, Olga lived on the Lower West Side until her passing, and her legacy is deeply rooted in this community. At the same time, we offer our congratulations to Dr. Tamara Alsalce, a remarkable human being whose dedication and vision have uplifted the Latino community not only in Western New York, but throughout the state. Dr. Alsalce's achievements, service, and impact are widely recognized and respected. This is not about questioning her worth. She has earned every honor she receives. Our concern is different. By remaining silent, we are allowing one organization to hold too much influence over decisions that affect our entire community. These choices are being made without transparency, without procedures, without standards, and without clearly defined guidelines. This kind of organizational behavior, especially from a not-for-profit, can open the door to favoritism, misuse of power, and potential corruption in how people are selected. We are a growing community, and it is time to evolve. Our leaders are supposed to serve the community, not the other way around. The next naming decision should not be made behind closed doors. Genuine community representation must be part of the process. That must be made clear. The Hispanic Heritage Council plays a major role in the local Latino community and is currently completing the final phase of its cultural institution in the heart of the Lower West Side. With such a significant presence, it would be powerful and necessary for HHC to be more visible, more accessible, and more transparent with its own people and with other institutions serving the same community. Attention Latinos, opportunity meets community, stronger families, stronger futures. The Buffalo Prenatal Perinatal Network, in collaboration with the Buffalo Educational Opportunity Center, will host the Strong Families, Strong Futures Workforce Development Expo on Tuesday, April 14th, 2026, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Buffalo EOC 555 Ellicott Street in Buffalo. Buffalo's Latino families are a vital force in the city's growth, and organizers especially encourage members of the Latino and Puerto Rican community to attend. This expo offers real opportunities to build stronger careers, strengthen households, and open new pathways for long-term family stability. This dynamic community-centered event will bring together residents, educators, workforce professionals, and service organizations with one goal: expanding access to career training, education, and the supportive services families need to thrive. To learn more about programs and services at the Buffalo EOC, please visit buffalo.edu/eoc.html. To learn more about BPPN or the Buffalo Perinatal Network, visit bppn.org or call 716-884-6711. This was a summary of the article. Page 3. In the spirit of the Oscars, in honor of our Buffalo Latino actors, in the past 10 years, our Buffalo's Latino community has been rich with arts, culture, and music. Among these creative forces stand our actors, the performers who step into the light, embody our histories, and give voice to the emotions we often carry quietly. Their work on stage, in community theater, and at cultural festivals continues to expand how Western New York sees our community and Latino identity. This feature is presented in the spirit of the Oscars, not as an awards ceremony, but as a moment of recognition, a moment to honor excellence, celebrate artistic achievement, and acknowledge the performance whose dedication elevates our Latino landscape in the city of Buffalo. Buffalo's Latino actors deserve to be seen with the same dignity, pride, and spotlight that global stages offers. Featured performers: Victoria Perez, founder of Raíces Theater Company and a driving force in Latino performing arts. Her work as an actress and director has opened doors for new voices and expanded the visibility of Latino theater in Western New York. Melinda Capeles, a commanding Puerto Rican actress whose presence has elevated community theater and cultural productions across Buffalo. Her emotional depth, discipline, and versatility make her one of the region's most respected Latina performers. Rolando Martin Gomez, a veteran Puerto Rican actor and director known for bilingual theater, character-driven storytelling, and decades of commitment to community-based performance. Maria Perez Gomez, actress, author, and educator whose dramatic work and mentorship continue to shape young performers and strengthen the cultural fabric of Buffalo's Latino arts scene. This spotlight is only the beginning. Buffalo's Latino acting community is growing, from emerging student performers to seasoned stage veterans. As our cultural platforms expand, so does the need to document, uplift, and celebrate the artists who bring our stories to life. Help us. Call for submissions. Are you a Latino actor in the Buffalo area? Do you know someone whose work deserves recognition? We would like to highlight our local performers of all ages, backgrounds, and experience levels to be part of this coverage. Submit your name, photo, and a brief biography to be included in a future issue of the Buffalo Latino Village. Your voice matters, your craft matters. Your story belongs in the pages of the Buffalo Latino Village. Next article, Peace, a Personal Commitment for a Better World by Angelica Aquino. In a world so divided and full of conflict, it is uplifting to encourage myself and everyone I interact with daily to embrace peace as a personal commitment. It is not an idealistic concept, it is a personal philosophy which has become the epicenter of every action, thought, and plan. We are not empty vessels. We all bring to the table our respective experiences which contribute to the advancement of our communities. As spring 2026 arrived, I encouraged you, my dear reader, to start journaling how you can incorporate peace into your daily life and interactions. Peace starts within. Choose a personal journey which would improve and work on it. Choose a cause that affects our community and start a call to action program. If you think you can, start a peace walk in your neighborhood in collaboration with other stakeholders. This new season brings us joy, hope, and renewal. I leave you with a poem in Spanish of the great Eugenio María de Hostos, May Peace Prevail. Nacimiento del Mundo Nuevo. A cada paso que la nave avanza, más fulgurantes muéstranse los astros, más plácido y vivífico el ambiente, más solemne el silencio, más augusto el misterio que a todas las edades atrajo hacia occidente. Allí del sol cuando la luz primera las sombras disipó, reconquistado por él para los hombres, pareciera el Edén. Pureza tanta en aquel suelo, el corazón encanta. Frente a las naves, cual si edades muertas dejado hubieran del Edén soñado, copia felices cuantos sueños fueron de las antes desiertas, olas sobre la cima, aparecieron uno tras otro paraíso, el Índico 92, el risueño jardín de las Hespérides y el Edén semítico. Colón embelesado se encamina de aquellas islas a la más cercana, horizonte risueño y transparente, una mar hasta el fondo cristalina, una estrella luciente, cada copa de palma en los palmares, urente foco el sol, un sol de llamas, ustorio espejo el cielo, intolerable reflector el suelo, cascada de colores el espacio, la isla una esmeralda, sobre un manto cubierto de diamantes, piedras preciosas por el aire errantes, los pájaros del bosque y la enramada, templo solemne la foresta umbría, fuste sublime de columna trunca, la ceiba por el rayo destocada, árboles vistos por el hombre nunca que ofrecen a la vista en su ramaje hojas y flores de plural linaje. Alma de aquel paisaje el ser humano lo sublima su aspecto soberano, del Edén en la playa, al borde mismo donde rompe la ola, Adanes se ven 1000, Eva solo una. Page 4. Un momento justo por la paz, recuperando nuestro poder, Taking Back Our Power, by Victoria Ross. Solo tenemos que convencer a los demás de que tienen poder. Esto es lo que pueden hacer participando para generar cambios, no solo en su comunidad, sino muchas veces en sus propias vidas. Una vez que participan, adquieren su sentido de poder. Esto lo dijo Dolores Huerta. What a difficult, crazy time we are living in. It couldn't be more apparent. The terrible and dangerous wars of aggression, the human suffering, unmet needs, and injustice, the misuse of our collective resources, and the many forms of government sponsored violence. And yet, we have a force more powerful. It can be hard to remember that we have power. So many decisions are made by people far away, inaccessible, and too often misguided, fearful, or corrupt. But the Dolores Huerta quote above reminds us that action is always possible. Action for ourselves and for others. Action even when we are afraid or in spite of fear. We do have a more powerful source, truth and love. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. That is why right, temporarily defeated, is stronger than evil triumphant. In Spanish, creo que la verdad desarmada y el amor incondicional tendrán la última palabra en la realidad. Por eso el bien temporalmente derrotado es más fuerte que el mal triunfante. Our truth is found in our stories, our lived experiences. We must use our voices to tell those stories and speak those truths. That includes doing research, gathering the facts, and understanding the realities shaping this movement. We witnessed that truth, plenty of it, at last month's No Kings 3.0 rally held Saturday, March the 28th, on Niagara Square in front of City Hall, and we experience it every month in the Latino Village. And our love, it lives deep in every heart. Love for our families, friends and neighbors, our community, love that builds trust, strengthens relationships, and pushes us to know our neighbors better. That is community, that is family. Our power also lives in the collective, people power. If you haven't seen it, watch the excellent film A Force More Powerful. One crucial piece of our collective responsibility is ensuring that local public employees do not collaborate with ICE, Border Patrol, or Homeland Security. Join us at the WNY Peace Center's Latin American Solidarity Committee April Coffee House. End complicity with ICE on Monday, April the 27th, 7 to 9 p.m. at Canisius University's Science Hall. Paul Linden Rittek of UB Law School's Human Rights Center will present a report on the harms caused when local and state agencies collude with federal immigration enforcement. Parking is easy on Main Street north of Delavan, and there are always light refreshments. Events and campaigns abound. Please visit wnypeace.org for more information. Next article, Artist Proposals for New Permanent Sculpture at Buffalo Art Park in Black Rock, from the Office of Assemblyman John De Rivera. Artists are invited to submit Phoenix-inspired designs reflecting renewal, resilience, and rising from adversity, values deeply tied to Black Rock's history and spirit. The sculpture should embody the neighborhood's strength and rebuilding and reclaiming its identity through collective creativity. Given the year-round outdoor installation, preference will be given to proposals using metal or other durable, weather-resistant materials suited to Buffalo's climate. Proposals should address durability, maintenance, and structural considerations. The call for proposals opens on Monday, March 16, 2026, and the submission deadline is May the 1st, 2026 at 5 p.m. The panel review and selection will be in May of 2026, Public announcement of selected artists will be on early June 2026. Design, fabrication, and installation between June and August of 2026, and the project completion will be in early fall 2026. The link is on page number 4. You may send an email for more information to George Fitzpatrick at rrccbuffalo@gmail.com. Next article, Investing in Ourselves, Create Like Frida Kahlo by Virginia McIntyre. Mexican artist Frida Kahlo is remembered for her self-portraits, her profound pain and passion, and her bold, vibrant colors. She is celebrated in Mexico for her deep engagement with Mexican and indigenous culture, and by feminists for her uncompromising depiction of the female experience and form. Kahlo, who suffered from polio as a child, nearly died in a devastating bus accident as a teenager. She sustained multiple fractures to her spine, collarbone and ribs, a shattered pelvis, a broken foot, and a dislocated shoulder. During her long recovery in a body cast, she turned intensely toward painting. Over her lifetime, she underwent more than 30 surgeries. Her life experiences are central themes in her approximately 200 paintings, sketches, and drawings. Kahlo's physical and emotional pain appears starkly on her canvases, as she does her turbulent relationship with her husband, fellow artist Diego Rivera, whom she married twice. Of her 143 paintings, 55 are self-portraits. The impact of her accident is powerfully depicted in the broken column, where Kahlo portrays herself nearly nude, split down the middle, her spine replaced by a fractured architectural column. Her skin is pierced with nails, and she wears a surgical brace, an unflinching representation of suffering and resilience. Kahlo's first self-portrait in a velvet dress, 1926, reflects the influence of 19th century Mexican portrait painters, themselves shaped by European Renaissance masters. She often incorporated backgrounds of dyed black drapes, a motif seen in works such as Self-Portrait, Time Flies, Portrait of a Woman in White, and Self-Portrait dedicated to Leon Trotsky. In Time Flies, she adopts a folk style and vibrant colors, wearing peasant clothing in the red, white, and green of the Mexican flag. Throughout her life, Kahlo returned repeatedly to the self-portrait, much as other artists revisited their defining themes. Rembrandt with his self-portraits, Vincent van Gogh with his sunflowers, and Claude Monet with his water lilies. Her political and artistic interests led her to join the Mexican Communist Party in 1927, where she reconnected with Rivera. The couple married in 1929 and spent the late 1920s and early 1930s traveling through Mexico and the United States. During this period, she refined her artistic voice, drawing inspiration from Mexican folk culture and creating small self-portraits that blended pre-Columbian and Catholic imagery. Her work remained relatively unknown until the late 1970s, when art historians and political activists rediscovered her. By the early 1990s, she had become a major figure in art history and an icon for Chicanos, the feminist movement, and the LGBTQ+ community. Today, her work is celebrated internationally for its powerful representation of Mexican national and indigenous traditions and for its fearless portrayal of the female experience. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo Latino Village on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. Fear and uncertainty hit Latino restaurants on Buffalo's west side. Source WKBW, story by Althea Castro de la Mata. Latino-owned restaurants on Buffalo's west side are feeling the impact of rising fear surrounding immigration enforcement, with business owners reporting noticeable drops in daily customers. At the center of this growing concern is La Casa de Sabores, a Dominican restaurant that has served the community for nearly 7 years. General Manager Carlos Cabrera, who immigrated from the Dominican Republic, opened the restaurant to bring authentic Dominican culture and cuisine to Buffalo. Over the years, La Casa de los Sabores has become a neighborhood staple, known for its freshly prepared buffet dishes, ribs, roast pork, fried chicken, and the warm, familiar flavor that remind many customers of home. But in recent months, Cabrera has watched customer traffic decline sharply. Where the restaurant once welcomed 40 to 50 customers a day, it now sees 25 to 30. He attributes the drop to widespread anxiety in the Latino community as immigration enforcement efforts intensify nationwide. There is fear, Cabrera explains. People are scared of going out, especially knowing there are ICE raids happening. Despite the challenges, loyal customers continue to show support. One regular, Keandre Woodard, praised the restaurant's authenticity, saying, "The beans and rice are phenomenal. It's the only place I go for this type of food." Cabrera remains committed to keeping the Casa de los Sabores a place of comfort and cultural pride. He emphasizes that the Latino community is strong, united, and resilient, and that his restaurant will continue to serve as a gathering space during uncertain times. "We are people who help one another," he says, hoping the restaurant can continue to offer connection and stability as the community navigates fear and change. Reading without barriers, bringing Latino village news to the blind. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service is a vital non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring that people who are blind, visually impaired, or living with print disabilities have full access to news, culture, and information. For nearly 4 decades, the service has provided 24/7 audio readings of newspapers, magazines, books, and community publications across western New York and southern Ontario. As part of its mission to deliver inclusive and culturally relevant content, NFRRS proudly includes the Buffalo Latino Village among the many publications it reads aloud for listeners. This partnership helps extend Latino voices, stories, and community news to thousands of individuals who rely on audio access to stay informed and connected. The service is powered by dedicated volunteers who read and record content daily. Listeners can tune in through a special radio receiver, online live stream, mobile app, or podcast platforms, ensuring accessibility anytime, anywhere. By amplifying diverse publications like the Buffalo Latino Village, NFRRS continues to strengthen community engagement and uphold the right to information for all. For more information, please contact 716-821-5555 or 716-821-0032. Their mailing address is Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227, and their website is nfradioreading.org. Next article, ICE holding facility in local Buffalo hotel raises concerns for Latino community. Recent reports confirming that a Buffalo area hotel has been used as a temporary ICE holding facility have stirred anxiety among Latino residents across the city. While officials describe the arrangement as routine and temporary housing, the lack of transparency has left many families uneasy, especially those living on the lower and upper west side, where immigrant communities are concentrated. For many Latinos, the concern is not only about the facility itself, but about what it represents: an escalation of immigration enforcement activity in spaces close to home. Community advocates warn that even the perception of increased ICE presence can discourage people from going to work, visiting local businesses, or seeking essential services. Local leaders emphasize that residents should stay informed, know their rights, and avoid acting out of fear. The presence of a holding facility does not give ICE expanded authority to enter homes, stop people without cause, or conduct raids without judicial warrant. As Buffalo continues to grow as a multicultural city, the Latino community remains strong and resilient, but transparency, communication, and community support are essential to ensuring that families feel safe and protected. For more information, you may contact Latino Village 1 at gmail.com. Page 6. Niños en la diáspora aprendiendo cultura a través del arte, por Dianís Román Rodríguez. Crecer lejos de nuestra isla es una realidad que muchas familias vivimos en la diáspora. Para nuestros niños, Puerto Rico no siempre es un recuerdo propio, sino una historia contada, una canción escuchada o una tradición que intentamos mantener viva desde el hogar. Y es ahí donde el arte deja de ser solo expresión y se convierte en enseñanza. A través de la música, la artesanía, el teatro y la pintura, nuestros niños comienzan a descubrir quiénes son. Aprenden que ser puertorriqueño no es solo un lugar en el mapa, sino una identidad que se construye con experiencias, valores y raíces culturales que se transmiten generación tras generación. Un ejemplo hermoso de esto es la producción Moriviví del Batey, donde los niños no solo participan, sino que viven la cultura. A través de la música y la actuación se conectan con su identidad de una forma profunda y significativa. La metáfora del Moriviví, una planta que se cierra al tocarla y luego vuelve a abrirse, refleja resiliencia, adaptación y fuerza, justo como nuestros niños en la diáspora. De igual forma, la artesanía juega un papel fundamental en este proceso. Cuando un niño observa o crea una pieza artesanal, no solo está haciendo algo con sus manos, está tocando historia, está aprendiendo paciencia, valorando el proceso y entendiendo que cada pieza tiene un significado. La artesanía le enseña que lo hecho a mano lleva alma, intención y herencia. En la diáspora, el arte se convierte en puente, un puente entre generaciones, un puente entre lo que fuimos y lo que somos, un puente entre la isla y el presente. Cuando un niño pinta una bandera, crea una máscara o participa en una actividad cultural, no solo está jugando, está conectando, está absorbiendo identidad sin necesidad de explicaciones complejas, está aprendiendo a sentirse parte. Por eso es tan importante que nuestros niños tengan acceso a estos espacios. No podemos depender únicamente de visitas a Puerto Rico para que conozcan sus raíces. Es en el día a día, en actividades culturales, en talleres, en obras como Moriviví y en la práctica de la artesanía donde sembramos ese sentido de pertenencia. El arte educa de una forma distinta, no impone, no obliga, simplemente envuelve, permite que el niño sienta antes de entender, y ese sentimiento se queda para siempre. Hoy más que nunca, Debemos crear y apoyar espacios donde nuestros niños puedan verse reflejados, donde escuchen su idioma, reconozcan sus símbolos y celebren su cultura con orgullo. Porque un niño que conoce su cultura crece con identidad. Un niño con identidad nunca se pierde. Page 7. A call to celebrate our poetic voices as we honor National Poetry Month. Let Us Celebrate by Alberto O. Capas. The Jíbaro elders who paved the way and the working poets who still write, teach, and uplift. In the murals of Los Artistas del Barrio, the rhythms of El Batey Puerto Rican Center, the emerging energy at El Barrio Caribe, the galleries of El Museo, and the poetic walls colored by community canvases, let us honor the young writers discovering their voices. Our children in Herman Badillo Academy and School number 33, emerging Latino poets shaping tomorrow's words. Let us lift the community platforms, Buffalo Latino Village, La Última Hora, Buffalo Latino Lens, Panorama Hispano, that keep our stories alive, our voices heard, our dreams connected, and to the power of poetry itself, to transform, to heal, to unite, to make us laugh, to cry, to love, to think, to stir our anger, to open our hearts, to remind us once again that words matter, stories matter, identity matters. On the poetic stage of Raíces, in the voices of Pérez, Pérez González, Capeles, Gómez, Rivera, and de Jesus, Buffalo's poets, especially its Latino poets, continue to remind us that poetry is survival made visible. In a world that too often tries to silence us, poetry becomes an act of courage. So this spring we honor every Latino poet, Latino writer, who has even stood up and declared, "This is my story, this is my truth, this is my voice, my community speaking through me, in music, in dance, in language, in culture. We are the historic poets of our journey, leaving footprints for our next generation to follow." Honoring Julia Alvarez during National Poetry Month, SUR's Poetry Foundation. Born in New York City, Julia Alvarez moved to the Dominican Republic with her Dominican American parents when she was an infant. In 1960, though, the political situation forced the family to return to New York. Alvarez has explained that the experience of being forced to refine her English upon returning to the United States made her very aware of language, good training for a writer. In 2013, she received the National Medal of Arts from President Obama. Alvarez's poetry often explores her identity as a Dominican American. She writes about childhood memories and the experience of being an immigrant living between two cultures. Her poetry collections include The Women I Kept to Myself, Homecoming, New and Collected Poems, and The Other Side, El Otro Lado. Alvarez also has written many novels, including Afterlife, Saving the World, A Cafecito Story, and In the Time of Butterflies, which was set during the Trujillo dictatorship in the Dominican Republic and adapted into a motion picture released in 2001. Her other publications include the memoir A Wedding in Haiti and the nonfiction books Something to Declare and Once Upon a Quinceañera. Alvarez also has published numerous books for young readers, including the Tia Lola Stories series, Before We Were Free, and Finding Miracles. Honoring Nancy Mercado during National Poetry Month, SUR's Poetry Foundation. Poet, writer, educator, and activist Nancy Mercado is the author of It Concerns the Madness and editor of the children's anthology If the World Were Mine. She earned a BA from Rutgers University and MA from New York University and a PhD in English from SUNY Binghamton. Latino Leaders magazine hailed Mercado as one of the most celebrated members of the Puerto Rican literary movement in the Big Apple. Mercado's work has been featured in many literary journals and including dozens of anthologies, including Looking Out, Looking In, Anthology of Latino Poetry, Breaking Ground, Anthology of Puerto Rican Women Writers in New York, 1980 to 2012, Poetry After 9/11, an Anthology of New York Poets, From Totems to Hip Hop, a multicultural anthology of poetry across the Americas, Boom Rush the Page, a Deaf Poetry Jam, Identity Lessons, Contemporary Writing About Learning to Be American, and Aloud, Voices from the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. She authored and directed 7 plays that have all been produced in venues such as the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. One of these works is co-authored with the writer Pedro Pietri. Mercado also authored a hip-hop educational curriculum for the Mayhem Poets, featured at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. Her film, television, and radio credits include the documentary film Yari Yari Pamberi, Black Women Writers Dissecting Globalization, directed by Jane Cortez, the PBS NewsHour special, America Remembers 9/11, Public Television's Poetry Spot series directed by Bob Holman, National Public Radio's The Talk of the Nation, among many others. Page 8 has an announcement. Queen City Forward, próximas sesiones de escucha. Nosotros necesitamos tu entrada sobre una nueva visión para la Ruta 33. La sesión número 6 va a ser el jueves, abril 16, de 5 a 7 de la noche, en Canisius University, Salón de Ciencias Comunes, en el 1901 Main Street, en Buffalo. Y la sesión número 7 va a ser el jueves 7 de mayo, de 5 a 7 de la noche, en la PS 309 Escuela Secundaria de la Comunidad del Este, en 820 Northampton Street. Queremos escuchar tu voz. Page 9. María Luisa Arcelay de la Rosa, por Talía Rodríguez. In 1929, in Puerto Rico, a law was approved granting the right to vote to women who could read and write. In 1930, the census recorded that my great-grandmother, Francisca Avilés y Candelaria de Rodriguez, was illiterate. She wasn't allowed to vote, but others were. In 1932, in the first elections in which women could vote in Puerto Rico, María Luisa Arcelay de la Rosa ran for a seat in the legislature. She won and was re-elected in 1936. The year before, a law had finally been passed granting all women the right to vote, whether they could read or not. A year later, my great-grandmother would be gone, dying after childbirth, leaving my abuela motherless, illiterate, and forced to toil as an orphan in the homes of extended family. And yet, on the radio in the background, Maria Luisa was there the whole time, teacher, businesswoman, political leader, legislator. I wondered, did the news reach the campo? Did word travel that there was a woman, una falda, making history? I want to believe it did. There's no way my abuela would have missed her entirely. Maria Luisa was the first woman elected to the Puerto Rican legislature. and the first female legislator in all Latin America. A businesswoman first, she attended a normal school and devoted herself to improving the lives of teachers and students across the island. She helped establish juvenile courts and orphanages, created pension funds for teachers, and supported cooperatives for handmade goods. She would have recognized my grandmother as a girl in need of care, education, and protection. My abuela didn't have access to those things, but even from a distance, Maria Luisa's existence was its own kind of education, a message to the poor, the rural, the illiterate, the orphaned. Women belong in democracy. My abuela may never have told me Maria Luisa's story, but she passed it down anyway. That wisdom lives in me. On the morning of election day, I remember that less than 100 years ago, my great-grandmother was not legally allowed to vote, and now in 2026, I was a candidate for office and getting elected to the Buffalo School Board. 76 days ago, at my swearing-in, I made history as the first public official in my region to take the ceremonial oath in Spanish, the first in the history of that body. That's how democracy works. Democracy is like a máquina de chavito. Nothing comes out if you don't put anything in. It works because people invest in it, because they recognize their civic duty. Maria Luisa, my grandmother, one of thousands who marched with Martin Luther King Jr., known as the March of Washington. Me, my colleagues, others who choose to serve, we are doers, people who opt in. Civic duty is the act of opting into democracy, the responsibility we feel toward the places we live, and the actions we take because of that responsibility. In the Puerto Rican community, when it's time to step up, we say one word, dale. And I like to think that's what Maria Luisa would say to me and to all of us inspired by her legacy. Dale, move forward, step in, actualize the promise democracy whispered to us the first time it met Puerto Rico and its people. Register to vote, join the PTA, join the union, go to the thing your friend keeps asking you to join and bring your kids. And if you cannot attend board meetings, you can watch us on YouTube. That counts too. Whatever you do, put your last name forward so that one day it stands in the history books alongside Maria Luisa Arcelay de la Rosa, because I'm working on mine. And the point is this: every day people doing everyday things define history. Access the Buffalo Public School Board meetings on YouTube channel at Buffalo Public Schools Board. I will be there in English or Spanglish every time. Next article, The Power of Storytelling, Transforming Voices into Vision by Manuel Hernández. When Janiel Reyes, Alondra Rivera, Jean Lara, Olga González, Paola Gutierrez, and Dianelis Coriano received the Ford Foundation acceptance letters in 2018, I did not just witness a student's success, I witnessed a spark that ignited a movement. It was undiscovered territory, but this was a lifelong storytelling with an impact on career pathways proportions. What began as an after-school writing project soon evolved into a mission to empower Latino youth through the simple yet powerful act of storytelling their coming to America stories. Although the original objective was to publish the stories in a book, the discovery facilitated financial aid and created leadership and communicative skills that were rooted in the cultural identity expressed in every word, letter, and experience of their stories. The stories transformed themselves into a vision beyond the simple exercise of writing a 500-word essay as a response to a prompt. In the years that followed, the workshop grew far beyond its original classroom and beyond my wildest imagination, pun intended. What started as a minority of students meeting after school became a network of young storytellers who began to see their experiences as more than struggle. Their relocation stories were testimonies of endurance, hope, and success. Through essays, personal statements, public speaking engagements in libraries, universities, television interviews, and spotlight speaking invitations in and out of state, students began to reclaim their narratives. They learned that their accents, their histories, and their journeys were not obstacles, but assets and sources of identity and pride. Parents soon became part of the process, attending story sharing nights where families read aloud their experiences of relocation, faith, and new beginnings. These moments became more than school events, they were gatherings of healing and unity. I realized that when families tell their stories together, they begin to see themselves not as statistics, but as architects of their own futures. By 2024, students in the program had earned over $1 million in scholarships. About 7 students had received the prestigious Bridges to Success from Valencia College. But the impact extended beyond financial aid. Storytelling had become a tool of transformation. Students who once struggled to find words in English now write essays that have won national recognition. Today, students have created their own career pathway. They have gone on to universities, careers, and leadership roles, carrying with them confidence born from the understanding that their voice matters. Each story shared becomes a thread in a greater tapestry of Latino resilience. Together, these voices form a collective narrative of purpose, one that stems from a vision of transformation that will transcend generations. Last page. Know Your Rights ICE Encounters Guide, prepared by Buffalo Latino Village, P.O. Box 742, Buffalo, New York 14209. This flyer is designed to help community members understand their rights during encounters with ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Carry this guide with you and share it with friends, family, and neighbors. Your rights during an ICE encounter. You have the right to remain silent. You do not have to answer questions about your immigration status. You have the right to refuse consent to a search of yourself, your belongings, or your home unless ICE has a warrant. You have the right to ask if you are free to leave. If ICE says yes, calmly walk away. You have the right to speak to a lawyer before answering any questions or signing any documents. What to do if ICE comes to your home? Do not open the door unless ICE shows a valid warrant signed by a judge. If ICE does not have a warrant, you can refuse entry. If ICE has a warrant, ask to see it carefully. It must have your name and address. Stay calm and do not resist. If you are detained, ask to speak to a lawyer immediately. Do not sign any documents without legal advice. Try to memorize the ICE officers' names and badge numbers. Contact a trusted person to let them know where you are. Important contacts: local legal aid organizations 716 853-9555. Jericho Road Community Health Center 716-447-0523. Bell Center 104 Maryland Street, Buffalo, New York 14201. Their phone number is 716-845-0485. Hispanic United of Buffalo 254 Virginia Street. Their phone number is 716-856-7110. Remember, you have rights and you are not alone. Stay calm, stay informed, and seek legal help. Write us if you have a story to share. latinovillage1@gmail.com. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the April 2026 issue of the Buffalo Latino Village. Your reader has been Marianne. Thank you for listening.